How's everyone doing today? Happy Valentine's Day. So if you can believe it, it's been 98 days since we've been together. That seems a little too long. Usually every other month, but because of the Snowmageddon that we got last January, we haven't been together for a little while. So thanks for being here. So we have a new sponsor that's joined us, so we're going to run through the sponsors, but is Larry Weiss in the house? I believe he wasn't able to make it.
I didn't see him. I didn't see Larry.
So Larry is from Weiss Advisors. He's a certified exit planner. So you'll see more of Larry. Some of you might have met him when he was checking people in with the iPad for about the last year. He had been volunteering to come in and help us out. So welcome, Larry. Okay, so also let's run down the sponsors. Mike Weiss in the back, if you could raise your hand, please, from Lapata Flegel. Anybody from Parkside here? Brittany? Brittany's here, thank you. Grant from Atomic, where you at, buddy? Raise your hand. All right, thank you. Jason from SWIP running the live stream over here. Tom Gaddy from Black Twig. Where'd you go, buddy? Raise your hand. Tom Gaddy. Oh, you're good. No, I couldn't see you. Jamie from CMA right up front here. Paul from Polsinelli. I don't think could make it. Anybody from Polsinelli here today? All right. And Matt from Scarin. All right, they're in the back. Thanks for being here. Round of applause, please. So they make everything possible. The bagels you're eating, the coffee you're drinking, the chair you're sitting in, everything, including bringing our awesome speaker on board. For those of you that don't know us, we're the Midwest Manufacturing Leaders. We are in our 13th year of doing this. So I don't know the exact number, but we're over 50 events at this point. So if you ever get a chance, go out to the mmlgroup.org website, take a look at the videos. There's just an entire library full of a wealth of information out there. So there's a sponsor table in the back, your name tags where you pick those up. If you would like to pick anything up back there from the sponsors, please do. So I'd like to welcome Paul McCain today. This is going to be a really cool story. Paul is all about cars. So he started in his garage at the age of 16. So if you see some of these cool cars running down the road with the LED lights underneath, I believe that's where Paul started, was in the LED lighting area. And he's grown that LED lighting into Diode Dynamics. So he started Diode Dynamics in 2006. They started off importing LEDs, relying on overseas designs, and they quickly found that quality was a real issue. So they decided if they wanted the best quality out of this, they were going to have to produce it themselves. So in 2014, they moved to a larger facility, hired their first engineers, and began to design and manufacture products in America. Let's hear a round of applause for that. So they started with one product and quickly expanded into additional products, and they made heavy investments in unique capabilities that would allow them to produce the best lighting products possible. So today, Diode Dynamics is the largest specialty application aftermarket lighting manufacturer in the United States. That's a mouthful. Congratulations, Paul. And they also produce LED components for some great vehicle brands you already know. So please help me give a warm welcome to Paul from Diode Dynamics.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here, everyone. It's actually my first time being at one of these events. Seems like a great group. Appreciate everyone who said hello. If you haven't, please say hi after. I'll be sticking around. But yeah, and some familiar faces from the community. So love to see the local support for manufacturing here in St. Louis, the various groups that we have, and seems like another great group here. So glad to be here today. Thank you for coming out on Valentine's Day. If you don't celebrate, that's okay, but my wife does. So. All right, so we're going to be talking about some supply chain things. First of all, a little bit more about me. As you already heard, started in the garage, great claim to fame, love the American garage. Actually, I started by actually making things myself with Radio Shack LEDs. So started actually making things, then moved to college, and it's hard to make things in a dorm room, literally. So imported and then started making things ourselves. That context has led to some interesting experience on my part, just because starting at basically ground level where I didn't have any capital whatsoever and bootstrapping the whole thing from the start led to some maybe questionable decisions in how tied in I am with overseas supply chains, and what as a company, like what our goals are moving forward from that, because we've just basically had to keep growing, building capability to improve and improve and improve our supply chain from a very extremely rudimentary state from the beginning. Today we've got a facility in St. Charles. If you drive by on 370, you might see it. It's awesome to have that space that works. Funny story there, we were actually trying to find a new space in 2020 because we had outgrown our city location, and we couldn't find anything. Like I finally found a great warehouse, and they said, oh yeah, after the end of 7-year lease, you need to rip out all of the office and lab space. I was like, so glad to build another manufacturing facility in St. Louis as well, or St. Charles. We basically do circuit board assembly. We've been doing that since 2014, very experienced on circuit board assembly to drive what goes into our products, and we make full lamp assemblies. So that includes a couple full headlamps, a little too complex for us today. There can be 100 to 200 components in addition to the circuit boards in there, as well as some off-road auxiliary lighting products you see on the Jeeps, Broncos. It's not just the lights under the car. Everyone thinks Fast and Furious. Nobody really does that anymore. So it's a lot of the off-roading, the overlanding. You see, if you drive out west at all, you see these big vans built up. We work with a lot of great companies there to build lighting for the trailers, that sort of thing. And then we do a lot of bracket design, wire harnesses. And for better or for worse, with the full headlamps, we deal with essentially everything. We deal with seals, we deal with wiring, brackets. The only thing we don't do a lot of is like stamping design and stuff. So internally, we do circuit board assembly, and then we do, final assembly of the lamps, which includes gluing, ultrasonic welding, a lot of robotic processes for the adhesive dispensing and that sort of thing. Some of the things we do too, it's like the new Roush F-150. If you go into your Ford dealership and ask for the cool one, you'll get this, they'll show you this Roush model. So we manufacture the whole front lighting that lights up in that Roush logo. And then they also tack on some of our off-road lights. You can see up on the right in front of the windshield there, our lights with their little Roush covers on them. So great partnership there. And beyond that, for the enthusiasts, we do a lot of this sort of thing where people literally go flying. I was not driving that. I do not go that crazy. That's a lot, but you can see our lights kind of all over that vehicle as well there. So we have a lot of fun. It's a great time being in lighting. It's a great space to be in. I'm very fortunate to be in an area that the technology is changing quickly, leading to a lot of opportunity to get in on new markets. And with automotive, it's fast-paced, but it's fun because every new vehicle is a new market opportunity, whether it's the OEMs or aftermarket. Every time a new vehicle comes out, there's always new ideas coming. The automotive car community is great for that, bringing new ideas to the table. So looking at our supply chain, first of all, it's been interesting to watch some changes over the past years, right? So a lot of this you might already be aware of or have thought of, but just looking at what's changed in supply chain, especially in the last 5 years now, almost a 5-year anniversary of COVID. It's like next month, right? So since 5 years, there's a totally new set of values for supply chain, in my reckoning. It used to be about lean operations, lower costs, trying to get things overseas, trying to get the labor costs down, just cost focus across the board to gain the advantage. That meant making sacrifices on logistics, supply chain systems, making very complex structures, especially in the automotive space. Very complex logistics, very complex supply chain. In the automotive world, they say, tier 1, 2, 3 for, who supplies what to get to the final product. And you're going through 5 different tiers internationally at each step. Lots of that to get what was seen as the most efficient supply chain. These days, we got a survey here recently from Ernst & Young. New set of values is out there. Agility is important, along with resiliency. The visibility of data and information is really key. Automation, and then excellence, upskilling, training for people, and process. The other big thing happening is deglobalization. So I'm sure you've talked to clients who have suggested this, and it's very clear this is even before the pandemic has started occurring, to where things are getting reshored, nearshored, onshored. Having that product in hand, having it quickly, having it with a reliable supply chain is much more important than the complexity and logistics of overseas. Another graph there. Apparently, I don't know if they just have AI listening to boardroom talks or whatever, but deglobalization, just mentionings in earnings calls and investor conferences, it's a big thing. Some of our bigger clients, that we work with through intermediaries and stuff, your Caterpillars, your John Deeres, that sort of thing, they're no longer allowing even, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 to be even offshore. They want it all in the US, and that is the mandate that they now have at the top level from the boardrooms. And that's great for us, right? The only issue that we all are dealing with, of course, is tariffs. So with tariffs, they're happening. How many people in here buy anything internationally? Okay, so some. So for better or for worse, coming in very young into this, I have a supply chain that's very much based in China. Because as a 16-year-old, picking up the phone and calling the injection molder down the street wasn't my first inclination. Instead, I just got online and searched and sent the emails to the person in China who responded to me within 15 minutes. They're very competitive. They have been. They're not competitive on quality. It's terrible, right? The people who respond to you in 15 minutes are usually the people who need the work, right? And so the last essentially now 20 years I've almost been doing this, for me, has been working myself up and working into more capable suppliers. And nowadays we do work with very capable suppliers in China. A lot of tier 1 actual headlamp manufacturers in China, that's where we go to get our components and things like that. Because since we deal with the aftermarket and specialty, our product volumes are going to be a couple thousand units a year. It's somewhat challenging to get a 750-ton press going to make full assemblies and housings to make 200 parts at a time, right? It's very difficult, which I understand. But that's what we have to kind of balance. So for better or for worse, I'm personally very affected by these tariffs out of China. It's not new, of course. We've known it's going on. And in my opinion, there's just no way around it. The only option is to start making the change now to make the difference, right? So about a year ago, we started looking at our options. Some in India, checked out some of the facilities in India. They're okay. They're still much higher volume. Checking out Mexico. Now we're worried about Mexico. I think we'll be okay. Still very high volume. But what's interesting now is we're seeing even these Chinese suppliers, especially in this last increase of 10% in China, they're now scrambling over there too. You think you're freaked out. China is very, very freaked out. They think any company doing business internationally is trying not to. They're trying to get domestic Chinese business. They're trying to shut down their international sales teams. And the ones that still want the business are scrambling to set up factories in other locations. So we work with probably 8 or 9 major suppliers in China, all then bigger companies than me. These companies have 200, 300 molding machines. They're massive plants, right? They've set up factories in Thailand, Vietnam. They are now Chinese-owned factories in these other countries specifically because they know the business is leaving. And they say, wait, don't worry. Before you take your business somewhere, please give us another couple months. Our factory in Thailand is almost online. They are in total freak-out mode. And I think that's what most people don't realize. Most people think, tariff in U.S. is essentially just a problem for the U.S. citizen. It's no, the whole world's watching, and China is totally freaking out. Which is in our favor too, because my answer to a lot of these suppliers was, okay, till then, just cover the tariffs. And they say, okay. And it's okay, I guess we don't have to freak out then. Now it's getting harder and harder as those tariffs go up, of course, but there is some negotiating pressure because they need the business. And in China, I don't know how experienced you are with Chinese culture and how things work over there, but nobody knows what's going on ever in China because, you think you don't trust the government here. If you do, good for you. But over there, nobody trusts it because nobody has any idea what's going on. Nobody knows what the laws are. Nobody knows what the policies are. Everything can be changing. If you do something wrong, they'll find something. They don't know when the power is going to be on in their factory. It's a mess. So you can imagine just the paranoia about potential downturn in the economy. Every time I've been over there for the past 7 years, the economy's terrible. It's going to be terrible. It's this constant fear that the economy is going downhill. And so anyway, It's an interesting situation, but I think with tariffs, there's only one way to work out of that, and that's move it out of China, whether that's the vendor or what you're doing. And the time to do it is now. It's just, you can't wait. Start reaching out. There's a lot of great consultants out there. We work with one, to help us get things, out of China to other facilities or to other localities. At the end of the day, you need that flexibility. Of course, with the tariffs, the big thing, if you don't do business in China, or even if you do, if you're here manufacturing, that means big opportunities, right? But it won't happen by itself. We have to educate consumers, we have to educate customers about the benefit of doing business here. I'm seeing more and more of these. I don't know how much you're on social media. I have to be. My customers are on social media. But I'm getting ads all over the place. Oh, we can help you get your molds to the U.S. We can help you do stuff. And I didn't screenshot those, but the first Google result I found was the Davies molding, knobservations. I suppose they make knobs. Onshore plastic molding, local manufacturing has benefits. Blog posts, simple posts on your website, capitalizing on these people looking to onshore things. Because, like I said, at the boardroom, people want to onshore. That means their suppliers are looking. That means that there's customers for you to serve as well. But you have to reach out and you have to tell them that, hey, we are here. And that's been the interesting part for me is, I'm trying to do that too, right? We're trying to bring things to the U.S. We have formed a relationship recently with one local mold company to try to start bringing some things over. We have one product so far and probably more to come. But it was a challenge, like who is interested in doing this business and working that out. So get yourself out there. Make sure people know that, yes, U.S. manufacturing is still here. We can still help you and make it a selling point. So with all that in mind, with the opportunities, with the changes, how do we take control? I've been working on this, for the past 20 years for my business, breaking it down to 4 things, which are some of those things that people are looking at. Having the flexibility and resilience, looking at technology and automation, visibility, and then excellence. So first of all, staying flexible, whether it's the tariffs or anything else, right? You have to have alternatives. You have to think about alternatives. Whether the customer is requiring a contingency plan or not, it's just worth sitting down and thinking about what the alternatives are. Sure, multiple vendors for the same component. But then how about multiple countries for that same vendor? Or, do they have another facility in another country? Multiple production processes for your product. With that, multiple sub-assemblies. I don't know how much kitting, sub-assembly work is, you all do, but does it make sense to start buying the components instead of buying the sub-assemblies? We've been making a concerted effort to get rid of sub-assemblies because we have a lot more control over, if we can bring in the 6 different components, we can have a lot more flexibility in knowing that there's different suppliers for each one of those things instead of relying on potentially one critical supplier who's just happened to be able to kit it for us. To us, that's very risky. Multiple shipping brokers, split up your shipments even. Like we do this very frequently, where it's like instead of putting it in 2 different, in one container, we literally put it in 2 different containers because the odds that one shows up a month late versus not. It doesn't cost anymore unless you're getting the entire container. But yeah, just thinking about ways to spread yourself out as much as possible. There's always something else you can do. There's always just a simple way of making some changes to do that. We have to forecast. Forecasting is important, but we have to be ready to change. I like to tell my team, it's like, when that forecast is in there, we need to be ready for it to be canceled at any moment. Especially now, you can imagine these tariffs. If anything happens Canada, Mexico, in my world, automotive, the whole plant's going to be shut down, right? It's going to be a disaster for us. So we have to be ready for that change. Assume that nothing is guaranteed, right? And then a big one, just investing in inventory. If you need to look at ABC, invest in your A products, but put more money where it's needed to strengthen that supply chain, strengthen your position. Inventory solves a lot of problems. And then, how can you work with your partners, your overseas vendors, to help reduce your risk? There's a lot of great programs out there. Have you talked to all your vendors recently about what sort of vendor managed inventory they have for you, what sort of help they can provide on forecasting? A lot of these bigger companies are implementing tools so fast. Does anyone work with Amazon? Anyone? Oh, okay. Well, I do. It's not always fun. But every time you log on to Amazon, they have completely new analytics tools for suppliers and stuff. Like, I'm sure a lot of you shop on Amazon, and it's all dominated by these like overseas companies, these knockoff brands now and everything. And it's like, well, that's because you don't need to be good at supply chain. Amazon will tell you exactly what to deliver, when to deliver it. Like, they do all the work for you. All the analysis is there. And a lot of companies are implementing that as well, whether it's even any larger supplier. They probably have more tools that they're trying to roll out to their customers, because obviously it's in their interest to try to measure that forecast and help you, help them as well, not get that panicked call from you to say, hey, I need more components tomorrow, right? So ask them, reach out. Everybody is working on this right now. They probably have new tools, or they can tell you what they're working on. Maybe you don't have to make the investment at all. You can just use their resources. With that, the technology. If you're not on board with AI, it's time to get on board. You need to. It's proliferating. It's a huge, huge, huge potential to change your business if you're not using it today. More, obviously, you probably know that. You don't need to support that at all, but another survey, what are the most important reasons the AI comes in your organization? Reduce cost, efficiency, that's a big one. Improve the visibility, improve process optimization, cover labor shortages even. It's a lot of potential benefits with this. It's also very, very accessible. It's getting more accessible. If you have software in your company at all, I promise you can benefit from AI. You can literally just take the code and paste it into ChatGPT and say, what does this do? Please make it do this different thing, and it'll spit out the code exactly correct. You have to get maybe the subscription that's the better one, but still, I promise, if anybody in your organization, like, we don't have an IT guy anymore. We have basically a full-time developer just because he does AI. Like, he's not there to help people fix their printers. He's there coding our systems now. He was our IT person. Now he's doing the code. I do the code on about 2 hours a day right now. I'm sitting there plugging in code into AI, just asking it to do things. If you know the product, if you know the process, if you know the system, you're going to be way more effective than any outside developer or, frankly, a consultant could be. I know we got some consultants in here probably. But you know your business best, right? So you're going to be able to tell the AI what data you need, what you need out. You know what best the information and how it all works. So lean into that. If you have anybody on your team who's computer savvy and knows how to operate your systems, they can design software solutions today. Our friends at the with Fred at the St. Louis Fed here, great organization, cranked out this data. This has been going all over the internet recently on all the software boards, Reddit, that sort of thing, because job postings on Indeed since 2020 for software developers. And you see, it's plummeting fast, and no one seems to think that it's going to be going up soon. Software developers. We're translators. We all have Google Translate now, right? They were translating into a language, and now anybody has that ability. I would just even if you think you're not good on computers, like, check it out. It is very, very powerful, and it is very accessible, whether for you or your staff, to start making those improvements. With the technology, too, that also helps with the visibility. The AI means it's lower cost than ever to run servers, to add the computation power. Like, if you thought that, we couldn't do this because the server didn't make sense because, it seems like a hard problem to solve, right? It's getting cheaper and cheaper to do that. You might have seen NVIDIA release this Project Digits. They said it'll be 1 petaflop for $3,000. Back in 2008, the fastest computer in the world was that fast, and it cost $100 million to make that computer. So a while ago, but today we have access to just massive amounts of computing power to where these problems can be solved. Even if you don't think that this is something you want to do internal to your organization, you should put some pressure on your developers, because it's very easy to do the development these days, and it's getting much, much easier. You should question the relationships that you have with outside developers and say, hey, how can we get more done? Because it is so fast to iterate, so fast to make the improvements today on these software solutions. And if you don't do it, it's going to happen anyway, because I think the whole model will be kind of changing a lot with how these software solutions even work. As more and more people realize that AI can almost build the entire software in a couple minutes in a lot of cases. I don't know if you've seen it, but websites together, games together, it can rebuild entire things within minutes. It'll be interesting. A lot of dynamics there. whether you have a legacy system or a new system. You don't need like an AI-enabled system or anything. A legacy system is fine. It doesn't matter what code language it is. It doesn't matter how many years old it is. AI knows what to do. And with this, one of the main goals with this is making the data instantly available to each person in the organization. Like, I think, especially when looking at, I think most of us in this room would consider ourselves small, mid-sized manufacturers. One of the big advantages we have to the large companies is we all have, data security requirements and that sort of thing, but we can lean into transparency to make our employees experts in that data. The big companies are going to have their politics, they're going to have their, Chinese walls, they're going to have their silos of information across tons of people in tons of different areas. One of the big advantages that I think smaller firms can still have is, of course, always our agility, but the transparency that we can trust our staff with and make every employee an expert. And getting that data in front of them is the way to do that. Of course, with that, accessing the data fast is key. Again, with the technology that's out there, it's easier than ever to make your data accessible. If you're not on a cloud-based ERP or a cloud-based platform of some type, I really think you should make the move there. Unless you have some amazing system that's just instant, locally hosted. But the cloud systems just give you immediate access to data. The integrations to other platforms are developing so quickly so that these systems can talk to each other. And you can get your data instantly. And if anything is hard to access for an employee, that needs to be solved. And by hard to access, I mean it literally takes more than 2 seconds to find any piece of data. I don't mean they can find it if they look on their computer, if they log in, whatever. I mean within 2 seconds. Like, get that data instant, because you're paying that person for their reasoning and analytical skills. You're not paying them to find data, right? That's a horrible waste of efficiency. And I sure hope that you're not walking down to the production floor to really find out what's going on. So get the data in the system, like, make it fast, make it easy to get that info. The data has to be live, it has to be in the cloud, it has to be accessible. Again, I think a huge, huge shift that'll happen, and a lot of investment is needed towards that. One plug, local company, Capacity. They're a friend of mine, David, runs it. Great company that they're trying to build here. But they have some great integrations. So they actually got us on board with AI like a year and a half ago. And they'll give you a solution, they'll give you a subscription, they'll give you, a chat. But it's like, we got them to put this Google chat. We use Google at our company. And this is just an example I did last night for a screenshot. But I said, how many of these are in stock? And it literally responds within a couple seconds and says, searching the Diode database, and it says, here's how many are in stock. And I can just log in, customize that, feed it the different data, and like, that's there. Of course, we've got our cloud service, but this was actually an easy integration. So if you are looking for a partner to look, to help with the AI, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Great company to help you do that, and it can layer in with your just basic chat services. Integration took about a year, so fair warning. Took a learning curve with them, but it's fantastic now. And then finally, the last thing I would be thinking about is your process and people, always. Again, I'm a big believer in the power of people within the organization, and whatever your favorite book is on how to ask more of people, of course, as we can see, merit is making a comeback, it seems, nationally, especially in the government right now. And one of the things I'm sure you've heard of is, sitting down with people and say, hey, what did you achieve last week, right? I think it's totally reasonable to ask for wins. Ask for wins of the staff, ask them what they're achieving. And if they can't tell you, help them achieve something, right? But we should be focusing on these wins. As a company, we do our, planning, we use, EOS, looking at rocks. It's like quarterly, it's like, maybe we need to be talking weekly accomplishments here. Things are moving so fast, especially operationally, supply chain, things that we can improve, things that we can keep building on. Ask for those wins, ask for them regularly, ask for them often, and focus on making those daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly improvements. One step at a time is enough. You don't need a whole new software platform. You don't need a whole new system. You can make individual improvements that'll really start making a difference cumulatively. And then, of course, aligning the team with common vision of excellence and demand that. Again, seems like merit's making a comeback, and I think it's very reasonable these days to demand excellence from your teams, from your people, and if that's just a word of encouragement to keep pushing for that, that's all it is. But yeah, I think that's very important. So we asked taking control of supply chain. A couple major points that I have here today. Happy to answer questions and very happy to discuss anything, any other topics or anything that might come up. It's definitely a pleasure being here today, and hopefully something here has helped. So thank you all.
So I wasn't clear.
Sorry. Start back here. Start in the back.
How do you keep your data secure?
How do you keep your data secure? That's a great question. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of customers who are asking those questions. I can tell you, this capacity company, it's from talking to them, it seems like half of the people there are all they're doing is data security and helping people answer that question. Because obviously for many organizations it's very important. We just rely on best practice. I mean, from our outside providers, from switching, especially switching off passwords, switching to two-factor authentication for all of our systems. Just essentially just best practice, server administration, server management. We host everything, AWS, all that. We have a retail website too, which makes a whole lot of fun because you hear things online with like, oh, this website went down. They get attacked by China. Every 3 seconds they get an attack from China. It's like, no, or Russia. Like, no, they get like 400 attacks every second. It's not it's not every 3 seconds. So having that external portal definitely makes us more susceptible to that sort of thing. But yeah, we do work with an outside developer on that as well for our external website, and just there's a lot of just best practice out there, but at the same time, there's only so much you can know. We got, just to be honest with you guys, we got hit by a exploit for our credit card processing, which was apparently the first one in the entire country that they had found this exploit in the software. And we found out because the Secret Service showed up at our building one day. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you guys handled this. Like, yes, we do. So, but yeah, it was a whole back-end workaround through this Google, analytics thing that they basically. So, it's tough. It's tough, and make sure you have the insurance. So, yes.
You seem to have one or two SKUs both on rolls and finished. How are you managing your SKU complexity?
So the question is about SKU complexity. That's a great question. In the automotive world, I decided to just give up on that because it's like, I would say, if you're going to manufacture brake pads, good luck just making them for a Honda Civic, right? It's like, it's not going to get you very far. So I kind of just, I cope with it that way, just knowing that in my industry, it must be a thing with SKU complexity. In our world, it gets even more challenging because if you go to my website, you'll probably get confused over the lights that you're buying. Hopefully, you're willing to read a bit, but like if you want to buy a light from my website, it's not just a white light, it's which color of light, which color is the secondary function, which beam pattern do you want, and what power level do you want. So for one little pod, I've got like 400 SKUs. And in my world, that's just offering, customer selection, but it is a challenge. I think the only answer that you have is rely on the data, right? You can't keep it straight in your head. We make circuit boards, so we deal with 10,000 components. And all those components look identical, right? We're buying, some things million at a time, some things 1 unit at a time. You have to rely on the data, you have to have that data accurate, you have to have the data consistent, you gotta have your routing set up properly, you gotta have your BOM set up properly, and have those safeguards, walls in the system. And actually that's been a big thing that I've been working on with our own, so we use Odoo for our ERP. It's great, but it's very easy to have a mistake and no one knows it. So a lot of the work I've been doing recently is just saying, hey, please add a function to warn the user, or put up an error message, or stop them from doing this, right? If this part should not be with this part, if I think that's a common thing. So helping users with the right training and building in error proofing in your system. If you're in automotive, error proofing is extremely important. But error proofing in the system itself should be a factor. And a lot of these developers, I don't think they think about that from the start. They assume that whoever's using the software is going to be very well trained on it and not make mistakes, right? So error proofing in the system, and then just using that system, well to have that data all accurate and rely on it then. Yes?
So in the tariff environment, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, but we're getting letters from customers saying, hey, we're rejecting any price increase. And how do you, I don't know if you come across that, I guess every company is responding differently, but I guess what's your opinion on overall pass-through? People are asking for operational efficiencies to try to reduce that. We've already implemented that since COVID, right? There's no more juice to squeeze out of there. So I just wanted to get your opinion on sort of price changes with any threat of tariffs.
Yeah, that's a great question. Just about how you deal with price changes with tariffs, customer letters saying they're not going to accept the price increase. That's very specific to your business. I'm fortunate to be in the world of automotive where, purchase agreements are 25 pages long because I have the customer's mold and I have their product and I have their design, and it's very, very, very sticky, right? So it's very much based on your business. But I mean, I think you might be seeing those letters because I remember last time around, it's, everyone got price increase notices, so the customers. So clearly the bigger guys are trying to get smart about it and just, throw the first message out there, right? So maybe it's just a matter of you sending that, sending out a message, we reserve the right to increase the prices. Practically speaking, that's probably what I would do, is just like ensure, look at your purchase agreements, look at your contracts that are in place, and have at least the language in there when you're accepting a purchase order, when you're, quoting anything, the validity of that quote, and, having it down on paper, right? That's probably the best way to go about it practically. It's always going to be a challenge though, I think, because customers are always going to make requests that whether it's on paper or not. And I think the other important thing is realizing it's going to impact everybody, right? There's no secret sauce to this. There's no one who's figured out the perfect solution. And if customers want to trade high degrees of complexity for the great service and product that they're getting today, that's up to them, and then you hope they come back, right? There's definitely going to be some transition though, and I think we can just hope for the best in meeting those customer requirements, even if they do throw out those sort of questions. So it's always funny talking to like the engineer versus then the buyer who just makes every request they want, right? So maybe just CC some more people. I don't know. That could help sometimes. Yes.
So I've heard you. How much of it stems from your personality? Of you talk about AI and data, and as being a top guy, that's actually quite unique. Is do you have a data culture at your manufacturer? And does it stem from you, like, not just looking at spreadsheet, like, you tell your people, why are our systems clean? Why isn't our data clean? Because you are in them. Does that stem from you, or is there other people in your organization who, like, push that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was just about, obviously I'm pretty focused on the technology solutions, and is that stemming from me or others in the organization? I'm fortunate to have relatively young staff. They're all very computer savvy. And that's one reason why we don't need an IT guy, because they can fix their own printers, which is great. But yeah, I mean, yeah, as you can tell, I actually started the business because I wrote the first website back in the day, HTML, before e-commerce was a thing, putting it up online and starting to take internet orders. Because guess what? I was only making products for a Hyundai Tiburon, and there's not that many of them in St. Louis, right? So e-commerce has been part of what we do for a long time. Now, of course, I'm not a software engineer, I'm not anything like that, but I think the important thing is understanding the value, and that's what I'm trying to communicate, is like understanding the value and having that data and knowing what it's capable of. That'll make you a believer in technology very quickly when you see the results. And even for me, until like a year ago, we got this capacity going, I was like, okay, that's cute, we've got a little chatbot, whatever, cool. But then seeing the way it can impact the organization, where I tell my team to say, hey, like, what's the answer to this? And say, oh, I don't know, I'd have to look at that data. I say, no, let's get a tool to crank out that answer for you right now, because it's just a matter, if it's a matter of looking at data, you can have an answer fast. And not that many cycles of that is going to convince even the most ardent, person that this is helpful. if it makes their life easier, right? That's the best way to make improvements, is to say, how can I make your life easier? How can you make your job easier? It doesn't take that long to convince people. So certainly, I'm convinced of that, and I think it, one point is it has to flow from the top. I think it's very important for leaders to be highly, highly familiar with their work, their systems, their processes, if you expect to improve and grow. But convincing people by showing them what the impact can be, I think can go a long way. Because, I mean, not everyone on my team loves technology, but they see what it can do and they say, whoa, and it's, oh, I didn't know I could do that, Not that many wow moments will get someone to be a believer. Yep.
So you seem pretty open to just feeding AI systems whatever information it needs. Is there anything that's too sensitive to provide to an AI system and concerned that it gets in the wrong hands?
Yeah, so in terms of security, AI systems, like what are you feeding in, feeding out to those? Great question. Our patent attorney was like, Paul, please don't tell me you're putting anything in the system. That could be disclosure. This could be, it's like, there's going to be some interesting case law around all this thing. And I'm like, okay, but the court is asking me to print out web pages still. So, I don't know how that's going to work legally. But good question. So obviously, of course, no consumer data, no customer data, no sales data even. Like we don't put any of that in. What I'm talking about putting in the AI system is literally like blocks of code that essentially just they're completely non-proprietary at the end of the day. Now, if I wanted to like patent the code or something like that, that'd be one thing. But like, fortunately, I operate on a platform that's open source where there's no reason that I need to worry about putting that in the system. So as long as you have ownership of that code. But yeah, I'm just certainly not feeding it in, things like that. Now, the exception to that being the capacity system where they do have the security in place. That is actually our own database that is hosted. They have their own language model. It's not just going up to the worldwide AI type stuff. So yeah, they were able to help those questions on the customer data, but beyond that, again, there has to be an inclination towards transparency. So it can't be a question of like, what data can we put in? It should be really a question of what data can't we put in, and understanding why, if it's a secret, why is this a secret? Customer data, sure, one thing, we have to respect data privacy, especially on my end with credit cards, everything like that. That's off limits, of course, but beyond that, what is really proprietary business, and is it really an advantage or not if this somehow ends up on some message board? You can find like half the websites in the world on a GitHub message board now. So I don't know if you saw like the new Doge website. They were like, oh yeah, here's the whole website and data and everything. So I think a lot of people know that it's just not proprietary. So I would encourage you to think about what you can put in the system. Yes?
What percentage of your clientele is international, and retaliatory tariff is a concern?
So yeah, the question is how much of our customers are international. Surprisingly, we do sell a lot of things to China. They haven't really worried about it. It's always been a huge pain to import to China. Most of our international customers, they've already been paying tariffs for a long time. It's very unique that the U.S. lets you sell everything here and get it for free, for the most part. China's always been. We have to fill out certifications for lighting products in China. They have to pay the tariffs. It's always been a huge pain. Beyond that, we do a lot of work in the Middle East, and they seem fine. I haven't heard about anything. And then Europe, same thing. It's very, very difficult to import our products to Europe. Lighting is safety equipment, right? So most countries don't let you just start bolting on lights to your vehicle, believe it or not. In Germany, you have to get it approved and keep it in your glove box for every little change you make to your vehicle, which seems like maybe a good idea in some ways. But yeah, I can't say I have much experience with that. Hopefully that's a situation that can alleviate itself with some things that get worked out. So sorry to hear if you're experiencing that. Any others? Yes.
What do you see as key growth opportunities for your business in the future?
Key growth opportunities. The big one is we are getting hammered with inquiries, just people trying to onshore, people trying to get things to the U.S. Whether they're bringing it up from Mexico or bringing it from overseas. We have a serious capacity issue on our production. We did hire a new plant manager a couple months ago. The last plant he was operating was 10 times our size, so that should be great. He's already made some great improvements, but we are trying to really increase capacity quickly. We've increased our starting pay. Started $20 an hour now. That's really helped, just bring in staff. We don't look for a whole lot of experience, fortunately, because we're doing assembly. We're specifically not doing a lot of the skilled labor, definitely no machining, no molding. If you do, it's obviously harder, I realize. But yeah, I mean, we have a whole lot of opportunity if we can get the right supply chain in place to support those customers, because that's our challenge now, is how do we get our components in the door. So if we can unlock that, we can start taking a lot more customers in, and I see a lot of pressure from big and small customers who are starting to look to America first for their products instead of looking at Taiwan or China, where historically they've been buying. Yes?
So, diving back into AI really quick, you mentioned that it would be a good idea to evaluate the use of external software developers or having like software developers on staff. What were the discussions like that you might have had internally to kind of shift towards like the mindset of not like going with like external software developers, or and then like what situations would you like maybe still look towards like hiring outside help, or kind of evaluate the need how like this internal software team?
Yeah, so good question. It's about how do we deal with trying to add more resources internally for like trying to develop some of the software, and then how do we make decisions still about using some external developers. So we use external developers to maintain, essentially, maintain our server infrastructure, apply the patches, keep things running smooth. That's really where we focus. Beyond that, one-time projects only. No ongoing agreements for just a monthly rate or something. One project at a time. Let's get one thing developed and done. But even those are coming back in-house because the time frame there and how much time you really realize that you're spending just explaining the problem to these outside consultants, you could have already had it solved in a lot of cases. So, internally, at least for my company, a lot of frustration with outside developers with just the timeline it took. The results were generally good, but just the timeline it took to make those changes and say, hey, actually, if we check here first, and maybe it's not the whole solution, but if we can get halfway there within a week or two, then maybe that makes sense. Again, proving it out, trying it out, convincing internally, and then now I've got a lot more people who say, hey, could I try to start doing this? Hey, I heard so-and-so did this. Do you mind if I look at my, sales consumption rate data? Could I get something, or could I talk to him? I mean, word spreads fast, if you have the right team. And a team that's wanting to think about those improvements, wanting to solve problems themselves. And I think internally we also have a pretty good culture of problem solving and trying to empower people to take those steps themselves and keep thinking about ways to improve. So it might be a bit of culture, might be a bit of just proving it out and trying it, but hopefully you can find some ways to at least consider things internally before you have to go external. Because we have to go external, right? We don't always want to. Yeah, good question. Any others? Maybe one more? Yes?
Do you use any supplier management frameworks such as ISO or TS standards?
So we're ISO 9001. We're beyond that. That might not be what you're even asking. I'm not sure. So maybe not. But we have our approved vendor list. We have like evaluation. We have supplier scorecards. We have all that good stuff. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Somewhat. But do you find effectiveness in it in helping manage the risk of supplier management?
Yeah, certainly. Just ingesting it. So managing risk in suppliers management and everything. Certainly, just ingesting the data and processing that data much more accurately, quickly, real time. Also integrating that with the software, because depending on the vendor and the parts, our system is automatically going to tell us if it needs to go to inspection when it gets delivered, if a specific quality check needs to occur when it gets delivered. And that used to be a very, very manual process to set up each one of those individually, usually after a problem already happened, right? Well, now it's much more intuitive to where we can provide the analysis, even based on the cost is a factor in it, how many times it's been ordered in the last year, how frequently it's ordered, to kind of set up that, basically just to get a lot more analytical in the way that we're trying to put the data together so that it's not always responsive, right? Like the AI, how can we be proactive about solving the problems before they happen, just by relying on that to do the hard work of finding the problem for us, because that's where we were at. There was a problem, then we responded to that, and then we had to put those requirements and make the changes and send the supplier corrective action. It's like, now how can we be much more proactive just based on what we already know and some very basic inputs to the system to get this suggestion. And it's been pretty good so far. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for the questions. Again, hope you took something away. Glad to be here. I'll be up here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, how about another round of applause for Paul? Okay, Jace, can you give us a hand with a picture? Our standing joke is if you're wanted by the FBI or on the run, just duck your head because this will go up on social media. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so our next event is in March, and this is one of our invite-only manufacturing, industrial, distribution, and construction operating company events. So this whole group will be back together in May, and that topic will be announced soon. If you are one of those manufacturers, industrial, distribution, or company, construction operating companies, we're going to be hearing from Mark Steele from Craftsman Industries, and he's going to talk about the growth strategies he's used to be able to develop and grow the company that he purchased, Craftsman Industries. So there are feedback forms on your table. If you need help with anything, there's a little set of blocks down at the bottom. If there's something that's not in the block that you need help with, go ahead and fill it out. And what we're going to do is just connect you with somebody in the group, within the ecosystem, to give you help. We're not going to put you on a marketing list or anything like that, but we'll give you a one-on-one connection where you could have a conversation with those things that you need help with. There are recycle bins and trash cans. If you could help us to please recycle and throw away your trash. And there's a bin in the back for your name tags. I hope you all have a great Valentine's Day and a wonderful weekend, and really appreciate you all being here.